Thank y'all for bearing with us for the technical difficulties. So as Ray mentioned, my name is Jake Claver. I'm the director for Digital Ascension Group. We run a multifamily office that specializes in digital assets. So one of two in the nation that do that. A lot of family offices, we wanted to put on this event for family offices. Being one myself, we go to a lot of crypto conferences. The space really kind of has a bad name for investment just because of all the scams and all the things that have happened, right? We want to bring professionals that allow people to see that this space is maturing, that there are ways to do this that is compliant and regulated, and set a standard to allow people to, ease into this space. I don't expect people to jump with both feet like a lot of our clients have. But if you did have a small allocation to digital assets, I think it'll pay dividends over the long term. I think it's an asymmetric bet. But the way that might affect you over the long term, as far as your family office or your wealth management strategy, any of the above, is just going to be liquidity to the investments that you're making. So the basic thing for this is these assets move value on a network. And what that means is, imagine owning a piece of the internet protocol, okay? Back when the internet came out, email protocol, not the internet protocol. There was I don't know if you guys have ever seen the clip, but there was like a newscaster and he's like, what's this @ sign? And, it kind of makes a joke about email never being adopted. And now, how many emails do you get daily, right? Yeah. Spam. So it'll be the same way for the movement of value. Right now, if you send a wire, if you send ACH, it can take days. The cost can be high, similar to like mail before email. And if you're able to purchase a piece of that network that's going to be moving that value, it has to have liquidity in it and enough value to move all the transactions on that network. And the more adoption that happens after it's been regulated, which is coming shortly, I think, with stablecoin regulation, you're going to see, for lack of a better term, a Cambrian explosion in digital assets. And the way that, like I said, will affect you, everything will end up tokenized. You won't even know that it's tokenized. It'll just be faster to transact. You can trust your counterparty because you won't have to hold any of their assets. You can trust the protocol. It's just going to make things simpler and faster at the end of the day. And so if you have an allocation to the networks that do that, you'd likely be very profitable, right? So that's, like I said, I just want to not dumb it down, but make it simple for people. I think there's a lot of technical terms and jargon that's thrown around. And with all the scams in the space, it's been, frowned upon. But I do think that there's a spot for this in almost every family office's portfolio. And it's a large asymmetric bet.
Erin and Rustin, we're going to get into the nitty gritty on regulatory, a balance between regulatory risk and risk management. But before we do, Matt, if you can dive into practical integrations for family offices trying to get into digital assets.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. I'm Matthew Snider, Chief Investment Officer of Digital Wealth Partners. And I think what's really important for folks to remember is that this is all very new, right? We're all still getting our feet wet. We're all still understanding like how these assets are coming to fruition. And if you ever remember a credit card or putting your birthday on the internet or like putting information about yourself online, these were all things that people were like, nah, we're never going to do that. That's never going to happen. And yet here we are, right? And now people are transacting millions and billions and trillions of dollars in this asset class. And for people to participate, understanding the basics or understanding ways that you can just get exposure to this without having to worry about how to hold it, without having to worry about custody, without having to worry about a lot of the technical implementations, that's where we try to bring that value, because there's a lot of that stuff that's still very cumbersome. It's still very difficult for people to understand. And the reason why I'm so proud of this organization is because we lead with not only the technical, but also the investment knowledge. So yeah, we understand how investments work. We understand how the ecosystem is going to move, but having a technical understanding of what is going on in the ecosystem, who the right players are, how to avoid the stuff that is a scam or that is a joke or the stuff that's just not important. You've seen validation from tons of these organizations and ecosystems. BlackRock just comes in and says, here's tokenization. Jake is talking about tokenization, or building ETF products and building financial products that allow people to participate in this asset class. And what we do is provide ways that people can get not only access, we'll just avoid that. Okay, good. All right. And not only access to the underlying asset in a sustainable and secure way, but providing liquidity for people to be able to lend against it, borrow against it, engage with it in a way that's more dynamic than just traditional assets. And I think part of this is really just all about education and helping bring people, or helping people bring this investment opportunity and meet people where they are. Because we have to understand from a family office perspective that not everybody's going to understand this or want to understand this. I don't care how the internet works. I don't care how my iPhone works. But here we are making telephone calls and doing Zoom video calls, and it's magic, right? It's amazing, and we love it, and that's okay. And it's okay that this technology isn't going to be understood by everybody, but we can still hold it as an asset, profit from it, and use this new technology as a burgeoning way to differentiate ourselves. That's a big, big thing. Differentiate yourself as a family office. How do you do things differently than other people? And I think that's another just important tenet for us to remember, is that there's ways that you can do that now. And we really try to bring not only, again, the security, but the information and technical understanding of how to do that for you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you, sir. Erin and Rustin, this question's for you. How can family offices find a balance between innovation in digital assets with regulatory compliance and risk management, especially in areas like taxation and DeFi?
Who wants it first?
Barrett. Yeah, I'll go first. And I want to just note, what Jake and Matt were talking about. I really like talking about blockchain as a database, because when you really boil it down, that's what it is. It is a different type of database. And I like thinking about it that way, because then you can start to understand how it has real world implications and it can solve certain problems that other databases cannot solve, right? And database, it really is not a sexy thing to talk about. It doesn't usually get to be in the spotlight, the type of database that is powering everything that you do day to day. But blockchain has different components to it and different features to it that can solve different problems, like international payments with instantaneous settlement and instantaneous clearing. When we're talking about the supply chain, those types of things, and crypto and digital assets is a way to power that database. So when you start to really break it down, it becomes more of a new tech, infancy tech type of investment that you can get to be more comfortable with. In terms of risk management, and this is really where I get on my soapbox, you have to understand the players. Like any new piece of tech, it has risks, it has nuances, and regulations take a long time to catch up. The U.S. government is really behind when it comes to regulating this asset class in a way that everybody can be compliant, that there's a roadmap. And at the moment, that roadmap is pretty fuzzy for everybody to think about. But there are ways to understand it and to understand the risks and to mitigate those risks. Tell you a quick story. I helped the London Stock Exchange onboard this asset class. And one of the things that we started with was, how do we know who the players are, who's doing the right things, and what assets are we supposed to be caring about? And so we created a risk framework. The very first thing we did, we created a risk framework to understand who's doing the right things, who is transparent in this space, who's going to tell us who the team is behind this, behind what they're doing. And on the asset side, again, who is the team? Can we see the code? Can we audit that code? All of those things that you want to know. We were able to identify FTX as a red flag before everything in 2022 happened. We also were able to identify the Terra Luna token as a red flag, and none of the clients that were implementing this framework were affected by those, other than the general market falling. But none of them had exposure to either one of those asset or that exchange because we were able to identify those. So there are ways to interact with this asset class that are certainly not risk-free, but are understanding of what those risks are. And you just have to find the right partners in the space that know what to look for.
Yeah. Thank you. So my name is Rustin Diehl. I've been authoring some articles on the end use. Where is this all going? What new is this going to bring to Earth? What's the point of all this? And one of the things I've identified is decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. If you think about our current organizations, they're all top-heavy. Most of them are hierarchical. We get information asymmetry and its children, collusion, gatekeeping, and rent-seeking in most of our organizations. Digital assets provide the opportunity to spread out the power, to bridge the gap between management and ownership. That's one of the new things it'll bring to Earth in the end. If it doesn't bring something new, inimitable of value, then it's all for nothing, and that is what it will end up bringing. It'll also, in the family office context, bring about a new form of provenance, a new form of appropriation of value. Think about a painting. Think about an estate. If you could take a giclée of a painting, like an artist might do a reproduction of a painting and do 100 reprints, and maybe put a couple brush strokes on those reprints and sell those. That's a form of a giclée. Well, what if you could do that? What if you could spectroscopically scan a piece of furniture or topographically do a geoscan of an estate and sell a giclée for a virtual tour of an estate? That would be another example of a new-to-earth form of appropriation of value that will come from these things. Now, where we stand now and that vision, there's a bit of a gap between it. And just like everybody here has expressed, we've got to start with quotidian things. We've got to start with storage of value. That's what we've got in the form of Bitcoin and Ethereum. We've got to get the plumbing and the wiring of this ecosystem in place. Those are like the X tokens. And then we've got the application tokens rolling out. We've got gamification. We've got DAOs. We've got other things starting to come out. So this is an ecosystem that's going to take a while to diffuse and to be generally adopted, but it brings new value to Earth. So as an attorney, I sit here and I'm mostly dealing with people who are investing in the early stages of this nascent technology. And I'm helping them to create structures for several purposes. First of all, I am big on risk mitigation. And so I set up asset protection structures. Lido just got into a bit of trouble, and we're seeing some general partnership litigation against people participating in certain structures. You've got to make sure you've got your legal structures correct to avoid vicarious liability and ancillary liability. Taxation, there are a lot of non-obvious tax pitfalls you can stumble right into. If you want to find a really good pitfall, just drop your digital assets into an LLC without talking to a tax attorney, and you might have an automatic recognition of capital gains, painful tax problems. Make sure you get good tax advice in this process. In addition to asset protection, in addition to tax planning, make sure you've got access to institutional services. Because of the reasons I've just mentioned, many of those institutional services won't even let you in unless you've got the correct holding structures. And so I'm helping to hopefully be part of this emerging current and usher this in by getting in place some fundamental structures as people accumulate these value storage, these plumbing and wiring tokens that'll help with transactions, and ultimately making sure that we're ready to deploy family offices with new forms of value appropriation and new forms of organization that previously didn't exist. It's a small change in form factor between an iPhone and an iPad. We're down to an Apple Watch, but very, very different value in your life. Like any general purpose technology, when we went from the steam engine to the internal combustion engine, we empowered ourselves to take flight to the skies. And this will be no different. A change in form factor is a fundamental innovation.
Well said, Rustin. Appreciate you talking about the tech. I think one thing that we haven't discussed yet is what Jake has been doing very well is organizing the people to put things in place as well, just like the wonderful talent that's on stage with me. Curious, Jake, what are some processes that can help a family office employ professionals from this digital asset space and help them with their growth in the alternative investment arena?
I did well in 20 and 21. and people probably don't know my backstory, so I'll just give you a little context and why we're in a position that we are. I started seeking out a lot of the people that I work with now. Did pretty well, and so I was like, all right, I want to make sure. I went to school for finance. I was like, okay, I need CPAs, I need lawyers, I need accountants, I need all these people around me to make sure that I don't mess this up. And through that, I gained a lot of education. All the people that I talk to on a daily basis, I think are brilliant, much further along than myself in a lot of regards. And I'm able to exchange value with them. I understand that, the asset class a little bit better. And so there's a symbiotic relationship there. But I would encourage you to reach out to people. We think that we have a pretty good group of people that can help you. If you come into a good chunk of change in digital assets, or just want to learn more about the space and maybe make an allocation, right? And know that it's with people that are on the upper echelon of things. If you do have a good competency with this asset class, call around, reach out to professionals. People advertise on their website all the time. I called over 200 different firms across the U.S. and then whittled it down to like the 20 people that we work with now. So, like I said, I think we have the best of the best. But as the asset class continues to mature, there's going to be a lot more people that move into the space. We have a couple investment banks in the room tonight. We have a lot of family offices. We have a lot of high net worth individuals that do have an allocation to digital assets. We're in like the second inning, right? So if you're looking for a position where it's further de-risked, you may wait a little bit, right? Instead of investing in the seed round, you're going to wait for Series B or Series C. And I don't think that'll be too far in the future. I think 12, 24 months from now, you'll get that chance. But a lot of the asymmetric returns that you're going to see, the 100x, 500x, 1,000x returns on some of these assets will be gone, and it'll be similar to the stock market, 20, 30, 40% on an annual basis if it's a good year. And then other years, things are going to be flat or maybe even down a little bit.
We've allotted 20 minutes for each panel. We've reached that mark. If you guys have any final closing thoughts, right now is a great time, but let's button it up and keep it short.
Just want to say, we were born on the philosophy of not being the pie in the sky, crazy return achieving crypto bros that you see a lot of. I wrote this book. It's called Warren Buffett in a Web3 World. Our ethos is about taking pragmatic, sustainable, long-term investment advice and using this asset class to build on that. We take this very seriously, and we use the methods of the people that have done this the best in the world, and we apply it to this new asset. And so I just want to say that this is really important to understand. And I think that that's really a great way to think of how we approach the space, because a lot of people don't do it in the same way.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming. It's great to see all the wonderful faces in the crowd. Hopefully you learned something this evening. Excited about, this panel and then the other panels that will follow. So, and to our sponsors, Serranis, Anchorage Digital, Securitize, Syndicately, appreciate everyone, for, helping us put this on, and excited for, the rest of the evening.